The chariots were readied, arrows were drawn, battle drums and conches were sounded, and the battle was about to begin when Arjuna asked Krishna to drive his chariot in between the armies. Seeing his relatives standing to fight against him, he became morose, lost his composure, and decided to quit the battle. Finally, he kept his celebrated Gandiva bow aside and sat down on the chariot. Arjuna's mind was depressed and eyes were filled with tears. With uncertainty, he approached Krishna for guidance, prompting Krishna to speak the most fundamental aspect of spiritual wisdom, its practical application, and the symptoms of a person who has fully realized the spiritual wisdom. The chapter 2 offers a concise overview of the entire philosophy, and thus it is titled as Contents of the Gita Summarized. To make our learning easy, we'll present an acronym for this chapter as Gita, where G stands for Guru, from verses 1 to 10, a very important section that marks the beginning of one's spiritual life. Arjuna was determined not to fight, but simultaneously he was torn and confused. He seemed convinced about his arguments, yet he was not. When a person is faced with such a predicament, he only has two choices: give it up and live a miserable life, or take to superior guidance to resolve it. For an instance, Arjuna tried his best to convince himself, by various reasons, to disengage from the war. Yet he could not do so, and became confused about his course of action. But Arjuna was intelligent, so he humbled himself and approached Lord Krishna for guidance and spoke as follows: "O my dear Lord, now I am confused about my duty, have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me." It is worth mentioning that it takes a lot of courage and humility to accept failure and one's own weaknesses. But unless we accept it, we cannot succeed in life. It is said, "Success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan." Arjuna was an accomplished and a fearless warrior. His presence on the battlefield was enough to pursue his enemies to surrender. Despite his great talents and history of great accomplishments, he was not falsely proud of himself. He was humble, and this humility gave him strength to acknowledge and take responsibility of his weaknesses. Notably, he admitted that he has lost his composure due to his miserly weakness. This acknowledgement allowed Lord Krishna to offer remedy for his problem, because Arjuna was now ready to hear to the superior dictation. We can draw a few lessons from this incident as well as from the attitude of Arjuna, and they are very vital for all of us. Lesson 1. Unless we acknowledge our own deficiencies, until then we cannot accept any guidance, and we cannot rise above our weaknesses. Kindly note, it is rightly said, failure is a stepping stone to success, but only for those who recognize and are eager to learn from their mistakes. Lesson 2. To be progressive in life, it is essential to cultivate humility, because it allows us to take shelter of superiors. It protects us from being falsely proud of our accomplishments and strengths, which otherwise can prove futile in another situation or environment. Similarly, without humility, we cannot understand the wisdom of Bhagavad Gita. We need to approach Bhagavad Gita as Arjuna approached Lord Krishna for guidance. And lesson 3, the fundamental step in spirituality is to accept a guru who comes in an authentic lineage of spiritual teachers and who has mastered the spiritual art. Please note, most things in life require guidance and instruction under a qualified teacher, and the spiritual discipline is no different. One may argue that he doesn't need a guru and can find all the necessary help from the wisdom books. This may be true, but we still require help to reawaken that pure inner consciousness. As the saying goes, one who accepts himself as a guru accepts a fool for a disciple. As we all know that after hearing Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna fought the battle and won the war. What seemed impossible for him in the beginning became possible. In other words, how did he resolve his predicament? We will call it 3 keys to success from the life of Arjuna. The first key, he was always eager to learn. Second, he was humble and acknowledged his weakness. Third, he accepted a bona fide teacher to guide him through the challenges of life. To the degree we are willing to align ourselves with the 3 keys mentioned above, to that much degree we'll find success and satisfaction in our journey of life. In the next set of verses, from 11 to 30, Krishna elucidates Arjuna about the most fundamental understanding of spiritual life, where I stands for identity, which raises a question about who am I? And the lack of understanding of it leads to identity crisis. If somebody has to ask me, who am I? My answer would be, I am Mayank Agarwal, I am male, I am an Indian, I am Hindu, etc. But interestingly, all these identifications or tags were not existent to me before I took birth and will cease to exist when I die. I hope you agree with me on this. Notably, these identifications or tags are all temporary within this lifetime also, as people can change their names, nationality, religion, and sometimes gender also. So who am I? Lord Krishna helps us understand this in this very important section. If only people can take guidance of Bhagavad Gita and understand who they really are, then the world today would be a far better place, a world free from conflicts, which mainly arises from our attempts to defend our temporary identifications, which anyways become meaningless after our death. In Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, verse 13, Lord Krishna establishes the distinction between body and soul, and he says, the soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age. The soul similarly passes into another body at death, which means we are spirit souls inhabiting temporary bodies. Just like the driver operates a car or as the bird lives in a cage, we, the spirit soul, are similarly utilizing this body. Although living within the body, we are simultaneously different from it, temporarily operating it to perform activities, to fulfill our desires, and to interact with the world around us. And then, in 2nd chapter, 20th verse, Krishna tells Arjuna, my dear Arjuna, you are eternal. For the soul, there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. In essence, the birth and death is of the body, not of the soul. Then what does death means? Krishna gives an analogy to help Arjuna understand this. And he tells in Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 22nd verse, as a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. Arjuna thinks, that's all? Krishna says, yes. Don't be so much disturbed about it. But what happens after death? Krishna says, well, you reincarnate. And he explains this in 2nd chapter, 27th verse. One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. For example, sunrise is followed by a sunset, which is again followed by a sunrise. Thus a cycle continues, and such is the law of nature. It is no different for living entities. Is there any scientific evidence to prove all this? Well, this is not a question raised by Arjuna to Krishna, but this could definitely be a question in our minds. Yes, there are many recorded case studies of out-of-body experiences and also of near-death experiences which proves soul exists. Not only this, there are verified cases of reincarnation such as of Shukla Gupta, Chase Bowman, and many others, which were verified and certified by accomplished personalities such as Dr. Ian Stevenson, Dr. Satwant, and many others. We have more than 100 books written about various cases of reincarnation for us to refer on this subject matter. Last but not the least, if this is all true, then why people fail to accept it? Well, there are different reasons. Some believe that soul cannot be perceived by our senses, so how can we accept it? Well, the matter of fact is, our senses fail to perceive so many things due to their inherent limitations. While others say that your philosophy of the soul promotes violence, which is also untrue, because Krishna ahead will speak about karma, which means as you sow, so shall you reap. In other words, if somebody commits unnecessary violence, then he'll be held responsible and will be punished accordingly for it. While others says life comes from chemicals and you only live once, this is the view of modern science and we all are taught like this. However, there is no scientific evidence of life being produced in the laboratory merely by the combination of chemicals, and they have never been able to do like this. To conclude with, until we realize our true identity as spirit soul, we'll undergo the process of reincarnation, accepting various material bodies and the subsequent sufferings and distresses of life arising due to our identification with the temporary labels such as name, country, gender, nationality, religion, etc. This is the first teaching that the Guru imparts, knowledge of who we really are. This answer to the eternal question of who am I can set the soul free. It is an answer that is worth hearing again and again. In the next episode, we'll study chapter 2 verses 31 to 72, where Krishna will discuss the practical application of spiritual wisdom and the behavior of a person who has fully realized it. Thank you for listening, and it's time for trivia. Question 1. In a challenging time, have you ever cast aside your own desired actions upon receiving the superior advice of a friend or elder? And second question. Write down some characteristics of soul as discussed by Lord Shri Krishna. If you get time, you can solve this trivia and leave your answers in the comments below. Thank you for your time and stay tuned for the next episode.